I proceed on with the next stanzas of a prayer for my daughter. Stanza 6. May she become a flourishing hidden tree, that all her thoughts may like the linnet be, and have no business but dispensing round the magnanimities of sound, nor but in merriment begin a chase, nor but in merriment a quarrel. Oh, may she live like some green laurel, rooted in one dear perpetual place. In stanza 6 of A Prayer for My Daughter, Yeats continues to talk about his hopes and expectations for his daughter. As she grew up, he wants her to be happy and content. Yeats hopes that his daughter grows up to embody wisdom, joy, and reticence. Yeats wants her to live in a protected place, away from gloom, danger, and destruction. He certainly does not want her to be exposed to the turmoil and frenzy he had conjured up at the beginning of the poem. He uses the idea and image of a deep rooted and stable sprawling tree to express the safety and security needed for his daughter. He wants her to become a flourishing hidden tree, and her thoughts like a linnet, referring to its innocence and cheerfulness. Like a linnet, he wants her to be satisfied in herself and infect others with her happiness. Further, he wants her to live like a laurel, rooted in a particular place. The poet reveals his wish on his daughter being rooted in the tradition. Stanza 7. My mind, because the minds that I have loved, the sort of beauty that I have approved, prosper but little, has dried up of late, yet knows that to be choked with hate may well be of all evil chances chief. If there is no hatred in a mind, assault and battery of the wind can never tear the linnet from the leaf. Yeats continues to talk about self-contentment. Uh, he believes that kind, self-contained, traditionally rooted women are incorruptible. The poet considers hatred to be the cause of all evil and prays that her to be left of that evil. Further, he believes that a soul free from hatred will preserve its innocence and hatred. Just as the storm outside can't tear leaves from sturdy trees, turmoil and war can't break a strong woman. He Yeats introspects and wryly concludes that his mind is dried up of hate, which is withering away. However, quite steadfastly, he keeps the temptation of hate away. He knows that a mind afflicted by hate is doomed, because the smouldering cinders of hatred consume the noble creativity of mind. In the line, to be choked with hate may well be of all evil chances chief. He asserts this with conviction. Stanza 8. An intellectual hatred is the worst, so let her think opinions are accursed. Have I not seen the loveliest woman born out of the mouth of plenty's horn? Because of her opinionated mind, barter that horn and every good, by quiet natures understood, for an old bellows full of angry wind. In this stanza, Yeats unravels his feelings relating to the woman who spurned his love 4 times, Maud Gonne. The wound and the rancor Maud inflicted on his mind comes to the fore in this stanza. Maud, a very ravishing woman, as per Yeats, not only rejected his courtship but went on to marry MacBride. Yeats could not reconcile to this all his life. Maud, according to Yeats, was a highly gifted woman who was showered with gifts from Plenty's horn. Sadly, her opinionated mind made her to squander all those precious things on Major McBride. Maud's fiercely held convictions and fiery idealism made her too opinionated. This imparted a negative aura to her personality. Hence, Yeats felt his daughter must not be opinionated. The poet implores his daughter to shun passion and wild feelings that he considered as the weakness of beautiful women. She must be temperate because people who love deeply could hate deeply too. Hate destroys people and makes them do cruel things, especially intellectual hatred, which is worst of all kinds. The poet reflects upon his emotional state when Maud Gonne rejected him to marry John McBride. He wants his daughter to experience neither the disappointment nor hatred. Stanza 9. Considering that all hatred driven hence, the soul recovers radical innocence, and learns at last that it is self delighting, self appeasing, self affrighting, and that its own sweet will is heaven's will. She can, though every face should scowl, and every windy quarter howl, or every bellows burst, be happy still. The ninth stanza continues to describe the impact of hatred and the benefit of staying away from hatred. Once hatred is driven out, the soul could recover its innocence. Then the soul would be free to explore and find that it is self delighting, self pleasing, and self affrighting. According to the poet, the ideal woman makes everyone happy and comfortable, despite all storms of misfortunes that come in her way. She is a stronghold for people around her, and her will would be that of heavens, for she has a clear mind. Eves then fondly hopes that his daughter becomes as beautiful as Maud, but does not get the latter's haughtiness and arrogance. He wants his daughter to submit to heaven's will with a smiling face. Her soul must imbibe radical innocence or be rooted innocence, akin to that of a tree. Such values would bring abundant happiness for her and all those who eschew hatred. Stanza 10. And may her bridegroom bring her to a house where all the customs ceremonious for arrogance and hatred are the wares peddled in the thoroughfares. How but in custom and in ceremony are innocence and beauty born. Ceremony is a name for the rich horn, and custom for the spreading laurel tree. The poet ends with an imaginary climax. Yeats, as the loving father, imagines the marriage of his daughter. She goes to live in her husband's home as per the set norms of custom and ceremony. She enjoys the safety and security of a cozy home, in sharp contrast to the decrepit, crumbling house described at the outset of the poem. She does not have to face the violent storm. He closes his prayer by returning to the image of the horn and the tree as the sources of custom. Such optimism might bring deliverance to the world. He wants his daughter to be courteous, as love cannot come unconditionally and freely. She must earn love with good efforts and kind heartedness, and she cannot win it by merely physical beauty, because hearts are not had as a gift, but hearts are earned. Summing up his theme, the poet wishes his daughter to possess such qualities that could help her face the future years confidently and independently. Now, poetic devices used in the poem. Onomatopoeia, the use of words that sound like the thing that they are describing. For example, howling, scream, spray, choke, scowl, howl. Repetition, saying the same thing many times. In the ninth stanza, self appeasing, self delighting, and self affrighting. Alliteration, the use of several words together that begin with the same sound or letter in order to make a special effect. Howling and Harpit, Fiddlehood and Coverlet, Great Gloom, Sea, Windscreen, being made beautiful like the linnet, live like linnet from the leaf, hatred driven hence, recovers radical, bellows burst, bridegroom bring, find a friend. Assonance. Similarity in the vowel sounds of words that are close together in a poem. Walked and prayed, young are, such overmuch, trouble fool, with meat, yet that played, beauty very poor rove, loved thought, beloved hidden, tree, dried late, linnet leaf, should scowl, quarter bowl, hatred wears, spreading laurel tree. Structural analysis. The meter of this poem alternates between iambic pentameter and crooked pentameter, as in I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour, and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower. The poem is rich in literary devices such as symbolism, personification, paradox, sibilance, assonance, alliteration, and onomatopoeia. The line "murderous innocence of the sea" is an example of paradox. Sibilance is found in the words "thief" and "scream", while "scream" is also an example of an onomatopoeia. The use of personification can be noted in the lines "future years dancing", which implies the transience of life. The poet uses symbols such as sea wind and flooded stream, which denote turbulent forces at work. Alliteration is present in the phrase "be granted beauty". The poem is written in a lyric form containing 10 stanzas with 8 lines in each stanza. The poem follows a regular rhyme scheme, which is AABBC, BDC. Thank you.